The moment Nintendo revealed the Switch 2's game chat feature and compatibility with quote-unquote most USB cameras, I knew exactly what I had to do. Try using the Wii U gamepad as a camera, and the EyeToy, and a Kinect, and a PS3 camera, and a Vita. By the end, I even had my PS4 plugged into my Switch 2 and had Astrobot dancing on it. Do any of these gaming cameras actually work on the Switch 2 though? Yes. Kinda. Some are gonna work right away, others require some creative thinking that I'm gonna go into in a bit, and no matter what, it seems like there are some issues with the Switch 2 hardware or software for now that means that this isn't going to work for everybody, and sadly didn't work for my Switch 2. I'll explain. The way Nintendo recommends you connect a USB camera is using the USB-C port on top of the system, although it does note that many USB cameras should still work anyway. And of course myself and other folks around the web have already started trying, confirming that even a regular old USB webcam, not just USB-Cs, can plug into the Switch 2 dock and simply work right away. You can do this with some phones, I'm guessing a handful of actual cameras, and there's evidence out there that this works for virtual cameras as well, meaning that VTubers could exist in the Switch 2 game chat. Since even capture devices work for some folks, it means that you could stream full movies illegally to your friends through game chat, meaning that this really is Nintendo Discord after all. In fact, somebody successfully connected the Switch 2 to the exact webcam that I use for streaming in my podcast. This isn't sponsored, so I'm not going to say the brand's name, but somebody showed that it was working without any modifications. This opens the immediate question that any well-adjusted human should ask. EyeToy? The answer is, you're going to hear this a lot today, sort of. The EyeToy only natively connects as a microphone. And yes, that mic works, although it's going to make you sound like a me from Tomodachi Life. Others online have also noted that the EyeToy seems to only connect as a microphone as well, and that corroboration is important. See, I've spent way too much time the last couple days eliminating different variables, and yet there is not a single unofficial Switch 2 camera that has worked on my Switch 2, even ones that are proven to work on other systems that say camera connected when plugged in. The webcam I mentioned using that other folks have gotten to work seems to actually only work properly for some folks. Others get the same result as the EyeToy and it only shows as a microphone, and in my case, it just didn't work at all, even when it said camera connected. It goes without saying that I reset my system. I actually factory reset my system at one point. I made sure that both it and the dock were updated, all the usual tech support stuff, no dice. My hunch is that this means there's either a software bug that has to be ironed out, or I have an unlucky console somehow where cameras just don't work on it, or there are going to be a number of people with randomly unlucky consoles that might need to be sent in and looked at. That's the Nintendo seal of quality at work, only nowadays they use the seal that's supposed to keep dust out from under your Joy-Con sticks. I could have stopped my work here, given up on the video, and gotten back to playing with the weird trading card game that Sony made for the PS3 webcam, which for some reason exists, but I think my process is going to help a lot of people that don't run into this weird bug. Somebody out there is going to be able to plug their Kinect or PlayStation Vita into their Switch 2 and make it work as a webcam. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. And if it's you, I'm gonna help you get there, even if I can't enjoy the fruit of doing this once, saying, hey, that's funny, and then forgetting that Nintendo locked a new button on their controller behind a subscription. Now, for my testing, I ran through a number of setup options, plugging right into the dock for older USB cameras like the EyeToy, using a camera that specifically works with the USB-C slot on top of the Switch itself as is recommended, plugging the older cameras into an adapter to work in that top slot, modding my Vita to directly output video through its USB cable, and even connecting a PS4, Xbox One, and Wii U to a capture device, sending that through an adapter specifically designed to convert video signals from HDMI to USB-C, in layman's terms, and plugging that into the Switch. If you're going to try this too, note that not every adapter is likely going to work for this depending on the camera. I bought and tried a couple different ones just to be sure, and again, I think it's just that my Switch for some reason isn't lucky. See, despite being named universal, not all USBs are the same. That's part of the issue that some cameras are going to end up having no matter what. If you see a USB cord or slot with a blue tint inside, for example, it means that that particular cord or slot is USB 3.0 or newer, which means that it can transfer data over 10 times faster than the older, non-blue ones. That's important for things like sending higher quality video from a webcam. Now back to the EyeToy. Like I said, it connected. It lights up to show you that it's on. It appears as a USB microphone, and its name and data actually appear in the mic settings page. However, the EyeToy needs a specific set of drivers for its microphone to work properly when connected to a PC, and since you're not going to get those drivers on a Switch without heavily modding a thing that just came out, it sounds like, well, this.
Please God, like and subscribe. This is all I have.
So if Splatoon 4 somehow has in-game chat, there will be a non-zero number of people squid-bagging and talking shit, all while sounding like they're part of the Minion Squad. I will be one of those people. For clarity, the EyeToy worked as a mic both while plugged into the Switch 2 itself with a USB adapter and when plugged raw into the dock. From there, I jumped to trying out the EyeToy's successor, the PlayStation 3 Eye. No matter how I connected this one though, I couldn't get it to do anything besides light up to show that it's receiving power. It didn't even register as a microphone. Apparently this bad boy also tends to require custom drivers nowadays to work on PC, since some folks still use it for flight sim software. Go figure. The PlayStation 4 camera would be next, but it's got a proprietary plug, and I'm not gonna lie, I just assumed it was also USB when the first two were, so I didn't even think to check and get one of the adapters. More on the PS4 camera in a bit. First, I want to say a sentence that nobody has uttered out loud in at least a decade. I bought an Xbox One Kinect.
Gaming.
Not only that, I bought an officially licensed adapter for it so that it was provided power and so that it could connect to USB, because I did know that the Kinects both had proprietary plugs. I chose the Xbox One Kinect because that one at least had a more deliberate effort that went into making it compatible with computers. And because I could at least test this one out to rule out any hardware issues. I haven't had a 360 in like a decade. While I could get the thing to work on Xbox and even PC, unsurprisingly, it didn't register at all on Switch 2. That's a lot of unsuccessful attempts all in a row. I know, I was swapping my Switch out from a surge protector to having its own spot in the wall just to make sure there wasn't somehow a power issue. I was testing each of these with the USB-C adapter to make sure they connected to my computer because I was worried that the adapter might be an issue, but that worked too. And as this was one of the first things I did when I got my Switch at midnight, because, you know, the EyeToy is just the correct system seller, Mario Kart can wait, a lot of this testing came before other folks online were starting to share that they were getting capture devices and whatnot to somehow work. So the first night of this system's existence, I was getting a bit discouraged that just nothing would work for this stupid USB camera idea. But the EyeToy connecting, even as just a mic, that gave me some hope. And I had two big ones left to hit on, the most difficult and most unlikely ones to work, but the ones that I know nobody else is stupid enough to try. First, the PlayStation Vita itself. If there's one thing you can trust with a dead console that nobody cares about, it's that there are some madmen out there that want to find ways to give it new life. This handheld is a great example of this, briefly becoming the premier portable emulation machine, or at least the premier one for folks that already had a Vita and needed something to justify that they had spent all that money. One of the things the Vita lacked compared to its older brother, the PSP, though, is that it didn't feature native video out like the early-gen PSPs did. That is, there was no way for any model of Vita to connect to a TV. That's what the PlayStation TV was for. I still can't believe they wasted that name on a non-portable Vita. However, eventually somebody designed a workaround, taking the Vita's own USB cable and tricking the system into treating that as if it was a USB video class connection, also known as UVC. This meant that when you plugged it into your PC, instead of wanting to file share like it normally would, it would immediately consider itself a video device. This means you could record native PS Vita footage, connect it to a larger screen, or the main thing that UVC has historically been used for, hypothetically turning your Vita into a webcam. It does have both a front and rear-facing camera after all, just like your phone. It supported Skype, rest in peace, and it has a camera app that lets you record video. Later PSP models also had a camera and brief Skype support, and since those I don't believe had native video out, somebody made a similar plugin that would allow you to mirror your screen to a monitor just over USB. Now, because there are for some reason Sony employees that are fans, hi, and decide how much access I get to interviews, pre-release previews, and review copies, I'm not going to go into too much detail on how to specifically mod your Vita to get to this point, just in case. I'm sure you can find some easy and intuitive guides right on this very platform that I used for this. But with all of this in mind, it is absolutely possible to use your PlayStation Vita as a PC webcam. The moment you plug it in, it just works. Case in point, I'm currently doing that right this very second. Yeah. Sadly, this did not make the same connection treating the Switch as a computer. Instead, it just started charging, thinking that the Switch 2 was a power outlet. There is a setting to turn off USB charging on the Vita for cases like this. That didn't help either. On paper, you could probably edit the custom driver to recognize the Switch 2 as a computer, but I'm not familiar enough with the Vita's libraries to even consider attempting that. Now this is where I did start to lose some hope. I even tested connecting my Vita to my PC, running that feed through OBS as a virtual camera like others have proven seems to work, and using an HDMI out to transfer that specific monitor with the camera feed over to the Switch 2 adapter, and like with the EyeToy, that connected as a microphone. Although it was reading the system's audio output as the microphone input rather than pulling from the microphone itself. I've used this exact HDMI to USB-C adapter before, successfully to output video onto different screens, so there's just something with my Switch 2 that won't take any of these possibilities. But since others have successfully connected their video capture devices, things like Elgato's, as a camera successfully, it's clear that this strategy might work on some Switch 2s. Although you would have to still set the Switch 2's mic input as the default system mic if you wanted to actually talk. A frustrating outcome for me, but it opens the door for you if you're up for the challenge. And that brings me to the Wii U, the one I was hoping the most would work. Given that some folks have gotten their capture devices to do what mine couldn't and register as a quote-unquote camera mirroring the console screens, it's possible to use the Wii U, but the one thing that nobody can really do is actually use the Wii U's camera. See, the camera only got used briefly in a tiny handful of games, essentially only at launch and usually only for a moment. The only way, as far as I'm aware, to utilize the Wii U camera for an extended period of time is with the deprecated Wii U Chat app, a precursor to Switch 2 Game Chat that was taken down years ago, although it was more like Skype, rest in peace. However, there are some mad lads out there that have been working on an open replacement for the 3DS and Wii U's servers. This effort is called Parental, and currently costs money if you want to actually try using most of the servers, or if you want to relive the innocent magic of Miiverse with only slightly fewer people. Since at this point I was committed to this stupid bit, I threw $10 at Parental to be able to revive and re-access the Wii U Chat app. Sending this feed through the HDMI to UVC converter that, again, to be clear, has worked as a camera in other cases and just isn't working nicely with my particular Switch 2 unit, sending it through like that led to it registering for me as a USB microphone, with the mic input again being the game audio output. That meant I could harass my pal Wayne like so.
Super Mario 3D World!
For other Switch 2s out there, going by what we've seen online, I am 100% sure that you could, at the cost of a subscription to both Nintendo Online and Pretendo Online, use your gamepad as your Switch 2 camera using the Wii U Chat in order to switch to chat. That in turn means that any of the systems I've mentioned today can be used as webcams on the Switch 2 by way of some creative thinking. By running that original system, a PS2 or an Xbox, on a screen where it's showing the feed from your EyeToy or Kinect or whatever, feeding that through an HDMI converter and or capture device and plugging the HDMI out into a converter to USB-C and plugging that into your Switch 2, by God, we need a flowchart. If you did that, you could take the capture feed of any of these systems and make that your Switch 2 camera. Again, you would have to change the mic input to be the Switch 2's default mic or some other connected mic if you wanted to actually talk to people. I'm betting decent money that you could also plug a Rock Band mic in and have that work as a USB mic for this exact setup, but all of this would work at the cost of your electricity bill being slightly higher and running multiple systems at once through a daisy chain of wires. The last one I tried with this revelation involved digging out my old PS4, finding a DualShock 4 somewhere and a micro USB cable to charge it, because who uses those cables anymore, and loading up the Playroom. This would be the exact same setup, running your PS4's HDMI feed into the converter, and if your Switch 2 doesn't have the same issue that mine does, this will work. Which means, at last, Nintendo fans could have Astrobot on Switch. All is right in the world. Some straggling notes here. I didn't attempt this with a 3DS mainly because sending a 3DS signal to a PC is an exercise in frustration unless you hard mod your system, which gets pretty expensive, and I'm okay with never doing that. On paper though, you could stream your 3DS showing your camera app to your PC, send that signal through the HDMI to the converter, and once again, it should work. As for the Game Boy camera, I'm sure that's been commented 100 times already. I'm guessing once again, this could work since somebody was able to make their Game Boy camera feed work as a webcam in the past, but that would be very involved and in my case would not result in any successful footage anyway, given my Switch 2 just not liking me, so I didn't try. To circle back to the start though, as you can see, the answer to whether any or all of these gaming cameras can work on Switch 2 is yes, Sort of, but you may have to be lucky with your Switch 2, and you definitely have to be creative with how you plug things in. If you enjoy videos like this on dumb little video game hardware oddities, I've got a whole video breaking down the Wii Remote's least used feature, a tiny amount of onboard memory that was on every early controller, as well as a video on the GameCube's least used features, and a brief history of console games that had multiple discs, how that works, all that fun stuff. Give them a watch. I'll see you in the Splatoon 4 lobbies, EyeToy in hand.
Until next time, stay golden.